So it was greeted by diplomatic delight and hailed as a historic breakthrough. The sixth-month interim agreement hammered out in Geneva overnight will mean that Iran will be offered some relief from key economic sanctions in return for freezing elements of its program of uranium enrichment and eliminating some of its stockpiles. But not everyone welcomes the deal. In a moment, we'll be hearing Israeli and British reaction and from a correspondent in Syria. But first, this from Jane Dodge.
So is the world a safer place today? They were certainly in a celebratory mood in Geneva. After a night of negotiations, a deal had finally been done. But both sides had a very different take on the detail.
Iranian enrichment program will continue and will be a part of any agreement.
This first step does not say that Iran has a right to enrichment, no matter what interpretive comments are made.
So who's got it right? The answer is both. For the next 6 months, Iran has agreed to stop producing higher-grade uranium that can be used to make nuclear bombs, but it can still produce low-grade uranium to fuel its power stations. It's agreed to get rid of its stockpile of higher-grade uranium. The US says it should all be gone by May, and Iran will stop work on its plutonium reactor. It may seem we've come a long way from the days of hostage-taking in Iran, a new era of diplomacy. But Israel says this is not an historic agreement, more like an historic mistake.
This agreement has made the world a much more dangerous place. I know that many share the concern of Israel, especially in the region, and there's a reason for this. For years, the international community has demanded that Iran cease all uranium enrichment. Now, for the first time, the international community has formally consented that Iran continue its enrichment of uranium.
Some of the sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy will be eased as part of the deal. Financial restrictions on oil exports and gold imports will be lifted.
We're very optimistic that with these agreements being made, our lives can go back to how they were before. It's very nice and desirable to have relationships with other countries after 10 years.
Iranians certainly won't see any changes overnight, but their new president sees the deal as the beginning of the end of sanctions.
Through implementing this agreement, the regime of sanctions will be broken, whether others like it or not. Cracks have been made in the regime of sanctions, and as time passes, the cracks will grow wider.
Keen to keep up the momentum, John Kerry has arrived in London, but is eager to stress this is the beginning rather than the end of the process.
Now the really hard part begins, and that is the effort to get the comprehensive agreement, which will require enormous steps in terms of verification, transparency, and accountability.
So has Iran come in from the cold? This deal may be just the start, but for the first time in more than 3 decades, Iran appears to be willing to compromise.